My name is Lauren, and I am 28 years old. I had planned the perfect birthday weekend for my boyfriend, and I don't mean perfect in the casual way people say it when they throw together reservations at the last second. I mean premium festival passes, luxury Airbnb, the whole route mapped out, the best restaurants near the venue bookmarked, a playlist preloaded for the drive. I had been building this weekend in my head since February, like it was going to reset everything between us. His birthday was in May, and the timing lined up perfectly with the 3-day mountain music festival, 3 hours north, big outdoor stages, food trucks, art tents, the kind of place you go to feel young and loud and alive. He loved live music. He'd talk about it the way some people talk about childhood memories, like it was a part of him he didn't want to lose. So I bought 2 VIP wristbands early, before they sold out. Almost $300 each. Access to covered seating, private bars, premium viewing areas. I pictured us there together, away from our routines, away from the little silences that had been building at home. Then I booked the Airbnb, a glass-walled cabin with a hot tub and a mountain view, $600 for the weekend. I covered all of it. He didn't pay for anything. When I told him, he hugged me hard, called me the best girlfriend ever, and posted about it like I'd just won him a prize. My woman spoiling me for my birthday weekend, heart emoji, tag. The post got a flood of likes. His ex-girlfriend liked it too. I noticed because she always liked his posts, always commented, always showed up in the background like a shadow he insisted wasn't there. He always told me it was nothing. He told me they were just friends. He told me she was dating someone else. He told me I was being insecure. I believed him because I wanted to, and because believing him was easier than admitting what my instincts had been warning me about for months. The week before the festival, he seemed excited. He helped me pack a cooler. He picked out outfits. He made a list of artists he wanted to see. He even kissed my forehead one night and said, "This weekend is going to be so good for us." And I let that sentence sink into me like reassurance. Then Thursday came. I was finishing work when my phone lit up with his text. No greeting, no question mark. Just a statement that made my stomach drop so hard it felt physical. "I gave your wristband to Talia. You hate crowds anyway. I bought those passes for her birthday weekend." I read it 3 times, like the words might rearrange themselves into something less cruel. Talia, his ex-girlfriend, the one he swore was just a friend, the one who always seemed to know exactly where he was, what he was doing, which nights he was too busy to answer. He had given away my $300 festival pass to his ex like it was a spare napkin, and he did it with the casual confidence of a man who truly believed I would accept it. My fingers didn't shake when I typed back, "Nice of you." That was all I gave him. 5 words. Calm, polite, almost friendly. The kind of reply that makes someone think they got away with it. Then I opened my laptop. At 3:47 p.m., I started dismantling everything he thought was secure. First, the festival website. I pulled up the order, found his wristband, and refunded it. $295 back to my card. Mine stayed active. His disappeared with a confirmation email that hit my inbox like a quiet slap. I texted my friend Jessa immediately. "You free this weekend? I have an extra VIP festival pass." Her reply came in seconds. "Hell yes. What happened?" I ignored the question for now. Next was the Airbnb. I opened the app, found the reservation, and canceled the luxury cabin. I lost the deposit, $200 gone. But he wasn't going to enjoy that king bed and mountain view while I sat at home being treated like the optional one. The cancellation confirmation arrived 2 minutes later. I stared at it and felt something settle in my chest. Not sadness, not anger, clarity. Then came the part that would sting the most. I opened Facebook, relationship status, single, public, confirm. Instagram next, single, confirm. It wasn't petty. It was visibility. It was me saying out loud, to everyone, what he thought he could keep quietly messy behind the scenes. Then I blocked his number, blocked him on Messenger, blocked him on Instagram, blocked him on Snapchat, blocked him on Venmo because I wasn't about to get hit with a request later, dressed up as, "Hey, can you just help me out this one time?" The whole process took 11 minutes. He was probably still texting Talia about their festival plans when the notifications started hitting his phone. Booking cancellation email, relationship status update, refund confirmation, user not available when he tried to call, the wristband he gave away, the weekend he thought he was still getting, erased in real time. That wristband wasn't the first time he chose her over me. It was just the first time he was stupid enough to put it in writing. I sat back on my couch and let the quiet return. My hands were steady. My face felt calm in a way that almost scared me. I wasn't making a threat. I wasn't negotiating. I wasn't waiting to see what he'd say next. I had already heard enough. I met him 2 years ago at a coffee shop near my office. He was charming in that effortless way that makes you feel like you're the only person in the room, even when you're not. He made me laugh on the first conversation, remembered small details from the second, and by the third date, it felt like we were already in a routine. Within 3 months, we were spending every weekend together. Within 6, he had a drawer at my place. Within 8, we were living together. Too fast, my friend warned me. I brushed it off because everything felt easy then. He had a steady job, I had a steady job, and the apartment we found was a 2-bedroom in the city. Nothing fancy but clean, and it felt like progress. The lease was in my name. He never seemed bothered by that. He moved his clothes in, took over half the closet, set up his stuff in the living room, and acted like we were building something permanent. The first year really did feel good. He introduced me to his circle, brought me to birthdays, group brunches, casual nights that felt like home. He called me his person. He took pictures of us and posted them. He held my hand in public. It was the kind of relationship that looked solid from the outside, the kind people assumed would keep going, because why wouldn't it? Then the ex-girlfriend started showing up everywhere. At first it was harmless, or at least that's what I told myself. A name mentioned in passing, a funny story from before we met, a mutual friend they both knew. Normal history stuff. Most people have an ex. Most people have a past. I wasn't threatened by the fact she existed. I was threatened by how often she existed in the present. Her name was Talia, and she popped up like a notification you can't turn off. He'd be scrolling and smile, and when I asked what was funny, he'd say, "Just something Talia sent." He said it the way you say a coworker's name. Casual, automatic. Sometimes his phone would light up, and he'd flip it face down without thinking. Not like he was hiding something, more like he didn't want to deal with questions. That distinction mattered then. Now it doesn't. I met her once at a get-together, and it was exactly as uncomfortable as my instincts expected. She was pretty in a polished way, early 30s, confident, the kind of woman who doesn't ask permission to take up space. She hugged him like she still had access to him, laughed too loudly at his jokes, and barely looked at me when he introduced me as his girlfriend. When she did look, it wasn't curiosity, it was assessment. I told myself I was being dramatic. The mentions increased around month 14. They stopped sounding like neutral context and started sounding like comparison. Talia always loved festivals. Talia hates staying in. Talia thinks this band is overrated. He'd drop her name into conversations the way people drop a measuring tape. Not overtly cruel, just constant enough to remind you there's a standard you didn't agree to compete with. Then he started texting her more. He didn't hide it. That was the part that made me second-guess myself. He'd leave his phone on the counter, screen lighting up with her name while we cooked dinner. He'd answer calls from her and step into the other room like it was normal. If I asked, he'd say, "She needed advice. She's going through something. We're just friends." Every answer had the same flavor. Casual dismissal dressed up as reassurance. I wanted to be the cool girlfriend, the one who didn't make everything about jealousy, the one who trusted her boyfriend. I told myself insecurity was unattractive. I told myself I didn't want to be controlling. So when the late nights started, I swallowed questions instead of asking them. He'd text at 7. Work thing ran late. He'd come home at 11 smelling like beer and someone else's perfume that wasn't mine. If I asked how it went, he'd say fine and go straight to bed. I started noticing how little he looked at me when he came in, like he was already exhausted from giving his attention somewhere else. Money started shifting too, quietly at first. When we moved in, we agreed to split everything. He paid a small amount toward rent, less than half, with the explanation that his student loans were heavy and he'd catch up later. I believed him. Groceries started landing on my card more often because it was easier. Utilities went to my account because he kept forgetting. He said he'd Venmo me, and then didn't. When I brought it up, he'd kiss my forehead and say, "I'll get you back," like it was cute. It wasn't cute, it was a pattern. There were moments where the pattern flashed bright enough that even I couldn't ignore it. Valentine's Day, 3 months earlier, I booked reservations at the Italian place he loved, the one with the wait list. I left work early, picked up his favorite dessert, even wore the dress he once said made me look like trouble in a good way. When I got home, he was on the couch in sweatpants, phone in hand, already halfway out the door emotionally. "Oh, I forgot to tell you," he said. "Talia's going through a breakup. I'm going to take her dinner and just be there for her. You understand, right? He didn't wait for an answer. He kissed my cheek, grabbed his keys, and left. I sat on the couch with a reservation confirmation in my inbox and a paper bag of dessert on the counter. The roses I bought myself sat in a vase for a week until I threw them out. When he came home later, he acted like nothing happened. No apology, no gratitude, just the assumption that I'd absorb it and move on. And I did. That's what scares me now. 2 months before that, his car broke down. It didn't really break down. It needed new brakes. $400. He asked me to cover it. I'll pay you back next paycheck. Next paycheck came and he bought a new smartwatch. When I asked about the $400, he snapped like I'd insulted his character. God, Lauren, I thought you cared about me, not tracking every dollar. I never saw that money. I started keeping mental notes after that. Not obsessively, just noticing patterns. He talked to Talia at least once a day. He knew details about her life in real time, the kind of details you only know if you're actively involved. What she ate, who annoyed her, which bars she liked, which weekends she was free. He gave her the energy I kept trying to earn. The festival weekend was supposed to be my reset button, a romantic trip where his phone wouldn't be the third person in our relationship. A weekend where I could remind him, and maybe remind myself, that I wasn't just a wallet and a schedule manager and a convenient place to land. He seemed genuinely excited when I told him. He hugged me, called me amazing, posted about it with heart emojis. Then Tyler, no, not Tyler, that was someone else's story. This one was Talia, liked the post immediately. And my stomach sank for a second because it felt like she was watching our relationship like it was her own entertainment. I remember staring at the notification and thinking, why does she feel so comfortable? The answer arrived on Thursday in a single text. I gave your wristband to Talia. You hate crowds anyway. I bought those passes for her birthday weekend. Giving away my pass wasn't a mistake. It wasn't forgetfulness. It was entitlement. It was him deciding my presence didn't matter, that my money was a tool, and that my disappointment would be manageable the way it always had been. It was him assuming I'd complain a little, then cave, then still show up for him because I always did. That was the real red flag. Not Talia, not even the festival. It was the certainty in his words that I would stay in my place. And that's why my hands didn't shake when I dismantled the weekend. Because by the time he put it in writing, the relationship had already been dying. I had just been the last one to admit it. He didn't give me much time to enjoy the silence. By that evening, the messages started coming in waves from numbers I didn't recognize. Friends, co-workers, people I'd met once at parties who suddenly felt entitled to an opinion. I ignored all of it. My phone stayed face down on the counter while I packed his things into boxes, not angrily, not dramatically, just carefully. Clothes folded, shoes paired, toiletries separated. I wasn't destroying anything. I was returning it. At 7:18 p.m., someone knocked on my door. Hard, frantic. I checked the peephole and felt a strange calm wash over me. It was him. His hair was messy, jacket half-zipped, phone clutched in his hand like it was a lifeline. I didn't open the door right away. I sat back down on the couch and waited. He knocked again, louder this time, calling my name through the wood like volume might change my mind. Lauren, open the door. This is crazy. Just talk to me. I turned on the TV and raised the volume until his voice blurred into background noise. After 10 minutes, the knocking stopped. I checked again. The hallway was empty. I opened the door, slid his boxes neatly into the hall, and closed it without a word. If he wanted his things, they were there. If he didn't, I'd donate them by the end of the week. He came back the next morning. I was drinking coffee, already logged into work, when the doorbell rang again. I opened it this time. He stood there looking exhausted, eyes red, anger and panic fighting for control of his face. What the hell is wrong with you? He snapped. You can't just do this. You didn't even give me a chance to explain. I leaned against the doorframe, unmoved. You explained when you gave my wristband to your ex without asking. That's what this is about, he scoffed. A wristband. God, Lauren, you're so petty. I smiled, slow and tired. No. This is about you deciding my money, and my plans were yours to give away. This is about you prioritizing her over me. So often you didn't even think to check. He crossed his arms. You hate crowds. I thought you'd be relieved. I paid for the passes, I planned the weekend. And you didn't ask, I said calmly. You assumed. His jaw tightened. You're making this about money. I'm making this about respect. He laughed, sharp and dismissive. You make more than me. You always throw that in my face. I never brought it up, I said. You just relied on it. That shut him up for a second. He tried a different angle. She's not even a thing. Talia and I are just friends. You're blowing this way out of proportion. You took something I bought for us and gave it to her, I replied. That's not friendship. That's a choice. He looked away. You're jealous. I'm done, I said simply. Take your things. The lease is in my name. You have until Sunday to get everything or it's gone. His face shifted then, anger draining into fear. You can't kick me out. You never signed the lease. You don't get mail here. You're not on utilities, I said. Legally, you're a guest, and I'm asking you to leave. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me anymore. Maybe he didn't. He grabbed 2 boxes and stormed toward the elevator, muttering something about regret and karma. I closed the door behind him and locked it. By noon, his mother showed up to get the rest of his things. She didn't argue. She didn't apologize. She just looked tired. You were good to him, she said quietly as she loaded the boxes. He doesn't always know how to hold on to that. I thanked her and watched her leave. That night, the smear campaign began. He posted vague quotes about betrayal and realizing who people really are. His friends flooded the comments with sympathy. A few asked what happened. He didn't answer. He wanted mystery. He wanted me to look like the villain without having to explain why. I didn't respond. I didn't post. The people who mattered already knew the truth. Then Talia posted a photo of her wrist at the festival grounds, my wristband glowing under the lights. Caption, can't wait for this weekend. A heart emoji. My phone buzzed immediately. Jessa called. Did you see that? Yeah, I said, I'm still going. She laughed. Good. And I meant it. I wasn't about to let them take the experience too. The festival was everything it was supposed to be. Loud, colorful, alive. I went with friends, danced until my feet hurt, sang along to bands I loved, and for the first time in months, didn't feel like I was competing with someone who wasn't even supposed to be there. On Saturday afternoon, I saw them near one of the stages. Talia laughing, his arm around her waist, the image I'd pictured for months playing out without me. I felt nothing. No jealousy, no anger, just relief that I wasn't standing there anymore. By Sunday, the story shifted again. Talia posted alone. Vague captions about independence. No sign of him. Jessa texted me a screenshot from a friend of a friend. Apparently, he ditched her Saturday night after meeting someone else. The ex he prioritized so confidently had dropped him the moment something shinier appeared. Karma didn't knock, it just moved on. 2 weeks later, he tried to reach me again through a mutual acquaintance. Long apology, promises, claims he finally understood what he'd lost. I replied with one word, no. That was it. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt done. The drive home from the festival was quiet in the best way. Not the kind of quiet where you're replaying conversations or bracing for what comes next, but the kind where your mind finally stops circling the same drain. My phone stayed on the passenger seat, screen dark, no notifications worth checking. For once, nothing felt unfinished. Monday morning hit like a reset. I logged into work, answered emails, joined meetings, and noticed something strange. I wasn't distracted. I wasn't checking my phone every 10 minutes. I wasn't wondering who he was texting or what version of the story he was telling. I was just present. It felt unfamiliar at first, like wearing new shoes that hadn't broken in yet, but it also felt right. The fallout reached me anyway, because it always does. People talk, screenshots travel, stories grow legs and walk into rooms you didn't even know existed. Jessa told me he'd been asking around about me, trying to figure out if I was really done or just needed time to cool off. That phrasing made me laugh out loud, as if my boundaries were weather patterns he could wait out. By midweek, his tone changed again. Less anger, more regret. He stopped calling me controlling and started calling the situation a misunderstanding. He told friends he never meant to hurt me, that he assumed I'd be fine with it because I was so chill. That word followed me like a bad nickname. Chill. Easygoing. Low maintenance. All code for someone who won't push back when you take too much. Then came the professional consequences. A coworker of mine who had friends at his company told me the HR situation hadn't gone away after the festival. Apparently, Talia's presence wasn't as harmless as he'd claimed. Complaints had already been filed before the festival weekend. Whispers about blurred lines, favoritism, and late-night meetings that didn't include anyone else. When the public drama hit, it forced the company to look closer. Emails were pulled, calendars reviewed, stories compared. He wasn't fired, but he was moved, sidelined, quietly stripped of opportunities that required trust. He didn't tell me any of this himself. He didn't get that privilege anymore. What surprised me most was how little satisfaction I felt hearing it. I wasn't rooting for his downfall. I wasn't watching from the sidelines with popcorn. I just felt affirmed. The same patterns that hurt me were hurting him now, and I didn't need to intervene for the truth to surface. One evening, I ran into Talia's name again in a group chat I hadn't checked in months. Someone posted a screenshot of her story, another vague caption about growth and lessons learned. Someone else replied with a laughing emoji and said, "Didn't she ditch that guy already?" The conversation moved on quickly, like she'd already become old news. That was the moment I understood something clearly. Neither of them had won. They'd just revealed who they were when no one was cushioning the consequences anymore. I went home that night and started reclaiming my space for real. I boxed up the things he'd left behind in drawers and corners, the little traces I hadn't noticed before, an extra charger, a hoodie, a mug with a chipped handle he liked because it reminded him of college. I didn't feel sentimental. I felt thorough. I dropped the box off at a donation center the next morning. By Friday, my sister called. She'd been careful not to take sides during the breakup, but now her voice sounded lighter. "You sound different," she said. "Like you're not carrying something heavy anymore." "I'm not," I replied, and I meant it. That weekend, I booked another trip. Not a big one, just a short getaway, somewhere quiet, somewhere I'd wanted to go, but always postponed because it didn't fit into someone else's schedule. I didn't ask permission. I didn't negotiate dates. I just went. Sitting on a balcony with a cup of coffee, watching the sun come up over a place that belonged to no one but me, I realized how much of my life I'd been shaping around someone else's indecision, how often I'd accepted scraps of attention because I didn't want to start over, how afraid I'd been of being alone, even when I already was. I wasn't afraid anymore. He made one last attempt through a mutual acquaintance the following week, a long message, apologetic, reflective, full of words like growth and realizing what I lost. I didn't read it past the first line. I asked the acquaintance to tell him I wished him well and that there would be no more contact. That closed the door for good. I didn't need closure from him. I had already built it myself, one decision at a time. The last time I heard his name, it didn't come with a spike of emotion. That was how I knew it was over. Jessa mentioned it casually over coffee, the way you mention weather or traffic. He'd moved apartments. He was laying low. He was telling people the breakup blindsided him, that I'd overreacted, that it was just one wristband and a misunderstanding. I didn't correct her. I didn't need to. Anyone who heard that story and believed it was welcome to it. The truth had already rearranged my life in ways his version never could. I kept the wristband, not out of spite, not as a trophy. I kept it because it reminded me of the moment I stopped negotiating my worth. It sat in a drawer with old concert tickets and boarding passes, quiet proof that I chose myself, when it would have been easier to cave. Every time I opened that drawer, it didn't sting. It grounded me. Work kept moving forward. I took on projects I'd avoided because they required visibility and authority. I stopped cushioning my opinions so no one would feel uncomfortable. A month later, my manager told me they'd noticed the shift, not in my output, in my confidence. That word followed me home and settled in my chest like something earned. I dated slowly, deliberately. Not because I was afraid, but because I finally understood the difference between attention and intention. When a man invited me somewhere, I paid attention to whether he wanted me there or just liked how it looked. When plans shifted, I noticed whether he communicated or disappeared. I didn't argue with red flags anymore. I acknowledged them and moved on. One night, months later, I was sorting through old emails and found the festival itinerary I'd made. The playlists, the reservations, the notes about which stage we'd hit first. I closed the file without rereading it and deleted it. Not because it hurt, but because it belonged to a version of me that no longer existed. I thought about the dinner where I learned to stand up quietly, the text that showed me how small he thought I was, the ease with which he gave away something I paid for, planned, and cared about. It wasn't the betrayal that ended us. It was the assumption that I'd accept it. I didn't. People sometimes ask if I regret how fast I acted, the refunds, the cancellation, the public status change. I tell them no. Acting quickly didn't make it impulsive. It made it honest. I didn't need time to process disrespect. I needed time to stop underreacting to it. I don't know where he'll land. I don't wonder if he's changed. That's his work to do. What I know is this. Love isn't a test you pass by begging. It isn't something you earn by making yourself smaller. And it isn't something you keep by tolerating a backup plan. Some doors close because you slam them. Others close because you finally stop holding them open. And when they do, the silence on the other side sounds a lot like peace.